All right, it's 7 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. In this second part of our reloading series, I want to touch on reloading handgun ammo, 9mm, a straight-walled case, fairly simple, with a single-stage press. So we'll talk about the press, we'll talk about setting the dies up in a single stage. We're not going to touch progressive right now. We'll talk about the trimming and all the other operations. We'll also spend some time with the powder throwers and things like that that you may want to use, and I'll show you the nice RCBS one as well. So for those who don't know me, my name is Dwayne Urban. I'm the creator of Maryland Gun Owners. I'm also the owner of Urban Defense, LLC, Firearms Training and Consulting, based here in Baltimore. I've been reloading for about 15 years or so, since about 2005. I started on 308 and worked my way into just about everything. Most handgun cartridges I reload, 9mm, 40, 45, 38, everything up to and including 50 BMG. So with that said, I am by no means the absolute authority or expert on these topics. You are responsible for your own safety, so this is provided for informational purposes only. I'm not going to be responsible for the use or the misuse of the information. We're all adults here. So, a couple things. Please remember engagement. So smash that like button, share this. If I say something that you really like, if I say something that you really like, go ahead and hit that wow or the thumbs up or the heart. That really helps to increase our reach on these videos. And also tag people that you think might have an interest in this so that they can see it. And just like the last video, this one will be left up. I'll pin it to the top over at Maryland Gun Owners as well as on Urban Defense's page so that you can look at it later if you have the desire to do so. So if you see me checking my phone periodically, it's because I'm looking at the comments to make sure I'm not missing anything, and also making sure that everything is going the way it's supposed to go. So with that said, I know we've only got a couple people in right now. If anyone has any questions regards to the first video that we did in the series, the basic equipment and discussion on reloading, I'll be happy to answer any of those now. Or if you haven't thought of any questions yet, you can certainly wait till the end of the video. If we have questions, then I'll do a Q&A session at the end. If we don't have technical difficulties, we had a couple technical difficulties at the end of the last one, and it did not allow me the screen froze up on this phone over here and it wouldn't let me see the comments. So if that happens, we'll get you on the next video. But if I see questions or comments pop up in here, I'll try and address them as I can. So with that said, let's talk about, and I'll be working as the host and the camera operator today. So bear with me. I'll do the best I can to keep the camera as good as possible. So let's talk about what we're going to be loading today. So today I'm going to load 9mm. I'm going to be using 124 grain jacketed full metal jacket projectiles. These happen to come from Midway USA. They're just generic full metal jacket with exposed lead base, if you can even see that right there. Powder we'll be using is going to be Unique. I have found that Unique is a really good all-around powder for most pistol cartridges, and you can even use it for shotgun. So it's pretty good all-around powder if you just wanted to try and stick with simple things. And it looks like this. The primers we're going to be using today are CCI. I buy these in bulk. They're not terribly expensive, and they work just fine. And the casings we're going to be using are going to be Winchester. These are nickel-plated casings, but if they're brass colored, it doesn't matter. I've gone ahead and I've pulled out 10 casings so that we can go ahead and get started. Now first, let's talk about inspecting our brass for damage. So as you pull the brass out of the bucket or whatever it is, you're getting it from the range, you're going to want to look for obvious signs of damage. So obvious damage would be things like this, and I'll try and get close to the camera so you can see, where the case has been really crushed to a point that it may not resize, and is it really worth salvaging? So this would go in the scrap bucket. Obvious signs of out of batteries, like this. This is from a open bolt subgun. Sometimes this happens. You obviously I would hope, recognize that. Let's see here. Case blowouts at the base. Stuff like this. Again, open bolt stuff, but these do occur. A bit less noticeable, but you see it when you turn the case around. Blowout at the case head. I was trying to pick really obvious things so that you could more easily see. Instances where we have bulging, case bulging. This is, again, open bolt subgun stuff, but you get the point. And then some things that are a little bit less noticeable. And I'm going to hope that the camera will pick this up. This is a 38 special case, and you can see that it's actually split all the way down. Here's another one. This is a 9mm that has also split. So you're going to want it. You don't want to load those. You're not going to have a lot of luck with those. And here's one that's really hard to see, and I'm hoping the camera will pick it up. And I'm going to spin it just a little bit so you can maybe see. There is just the tiniest little blowout right here, just the tiniest little bit, and you really got to kind of have good eyes to catch that stuff. So check your cases. Now, the 10 cases that I have here in front of me, and I'll bring the camera closer as we get more into it. The 10 cases I have in front of me have already been cleaned. They were cleaned using the wet tumbler from Frankfurt Arsenal. Really like that, and so that's what I did. So let's go ahead and get into installing the resizing depriming die. I'm going to move the camera so hopefully we can get a better look. Might not be able to see me too well, but you'll be able to see the press. Okay, now the first thing we have to do is we have to resize the case down to a size that will allow it to chamber. Now, to kind of give you an idea of why that's important, let me move this up a little bit. So this is a case that I did not resize. I just dropped it on the ground. Okay. This is a case that I did not resize, and this is a case gauge simulating a chamber. I'm going to drop it in. You see that it does not go all the way in. Okay, so that's something that you would not it would not pass. Now here's one of the ones. This is one of the ones that was resized. We drop it in, it goes flat. Okay, so we have to get the case sized back down. We also got to knock that old primer out. So here's how it's going to go. I'm going to take the resizing die, which is this guy right here, and the manual tells us to run the ram all the way up. Now I've put the correct 9mm shell holder, which is this thing right here, and I placed this, snap this into place, and I run the dial or the handle all the way up. Now I'm going to thread in this die until it touches the shell holder. Now what the manual tells us to do is once it's all the way threaded down and it touches the shell holder, to lock it in place. So it is in fact touching. There's a little bit of cam over on this press, so we're going to go ahead and screw this locking collar down. Use the wrench. The dies, by the way, that I'm using are Hornady nitride. Forget what they're called, but they're the Hornady nitride dies. They're older, but they work just fine. You'll also notice over here there's an area where you could put an Allen wrench. So if you wanted to set this and you didn't want to have to reset it again, you could just simply lock it down. So with that in place, I'm going to take my case. I'm going to put it into the shell holder. I'm going to run it up, and that is going to resize that case. We'll set that to the side. That's the first one. Second one. And I'm going to do all all 10, just to give you an idea of how much time this can take on a single stage press. Now again, if you're trying to do volume reloading, unless you have a whole lot of time on your hands, this may not be the best option. But it's a great place to start. And hopefully you guys can all see the operation here. And we got 2 left. All right. Now I'm going to move the camera around a little bit. Hopefully I'll still be able to see what you can see. And I'm going to show you the operation of trimming these cases. So we talked last time about these Lee, the Lee trimming set, and they really have an interesting take on reloading equipment. Sometimes they just knock it out of the park. The way this works is I'm going to go ahead and slide this piece of brass in here, and I'm just going to tighten it down. Now you'll notice this mandrel on here, we got cutting blades. I'll take the case out real quick. This will bottom out on there, so it can only go but so far. So you get a very uniform trim. I'm going to do this by hand, but you could simply chuck this into a drill or a drill press if you wanted. Now, it's not going to, these aren't terribly long, but you'll feel it trimming. And I'm going to show you the stuff that it's taking off in a minute. So we do that, and now we have to knock the burrs off. So I'm going to use this tool. Just run it like this. You don't have to go crazy on it. Just knock the burrs off. And there's one. Set it aside. Next one. There you go. I apologize for the slowness of this forgot to deburr. The slowness of this process, but that is what it is. And this video won't be quite as long as the last one, which went like 58 minutes. I'm sure some of you will appreciate that. I find I've got this set up for 50 BMG, and when you're only loading like 50 rounds, it's not too bad. When you're trying to reload hundreds of rounds, it can get a little bit monotonous. And you'll feel it cut, and then you'll feel it just stop cutting. It's not, it'll take it all the way down to as far as it can go, and then it stops. That's 5. One thing I found about this sometimes is the cases want to spin around in here, so sometimes you really got to wrench down on it to get it nice and tight. Probably that and the fact it's just a little bit slow is really the only flaw of this system. Now, I will say this. Do you need to trim 9mm handgun, straight-walled handgun, 38, 357, 40, 45 every single time you reload it? And the answer is no. Okay? When I first started, I kind of really did all the steps, and this step I don't think I really trim pistol brass at all, even on multiple firings. I'm showing you this because this is in fact a step, but in my personal experience, and I'm sure others can chime in, this is not really that critical when you're talking about straight wall pistol cases. When you get into rifle cases, yes, it is going to be more critical. Okay, coming up on the last one for those of you that are still with me. And then I'll show you what we've got on the piece of paper here that I put down so that we could all see what has come off of these cases. Okay. All right, there they are. Let me move the camera. Maybe you guys can see all the stuff here, or maybe you can't. Hard for me to tell. But all that brass there, all those brass shavings there. Now, another thing that you can use, and I'm not going to use it today, is going to be the retting here. This type of hand lathe type of device. It's already set up for 300 blackout. I don't feel like losing the adjustment. That's every bit as fast or slow as the method I just showed you, and it's about $100 and some for one of those. So these are a lot less expensive. I think this whole setup was like $20 or $15 or something. So you figure out for yourself what's more important. Okay. Now, so we did the trimming. All right, let's talk about priming real quick. So I might have to get a little fancy with my camera work here, but we've knocked the primer out, we've resized the case, now we've got to put a new primer in it. CCIs. Now this press, I think you all can see this little arm here, this press allows us to prime on the press. So I'll do about half of them like that, and I'll do half of them or so on the... Actually, I'll tell you what. Let me do this. I'm going to do this one real quick. We'll do one on here or two on here, a couple of them on here, and then we'll do some more on the press. So we got 10 rounds total to prime. Now I'll just go ahead and take a couple primers, drop them in this pan here. That's 4. And I've got the primers in the pan. Go ahead and put the lid on, and I'm going to let the primers go down into the hopper there, and we're going to take one of these pieces here of brass. It's got no primer in it. We're going to stick it in the hand tool away from your face and away from your body. If this were to go off, you want everything going that way, not into your face. Squeeze the handle, release the handle. Try not to drop the brass, and we'll see that we have a fresh primer. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's all that we put in there. That's pretty fast. If you got a hand prime, something like this would be quite useful. Not as fast on the press, but I want to show you that operation. So, taking the primers out one at a time, we set it in here. I'll kind of come close so you can see. So we set it right in here. You'll see it's facing the correct direction. Now, take a piece of brass, stick it in, and now we're going to go the opposite direction. Pushing the handle this way, and that then forces the ram down, forces the shell holder down, and pushes the primer into the case. So let's pull the rest of those primers out, and we'll try and do these real quick. Again, don't look directly down into it. Last thing you want to do is have one of these go off. It's rare, but it happens, and injure yourself. And the last one. Okay, so all the primers are in. So now let's go ahead and talk about putting the powder in. And there's a couple methods that we can accomplish that by. Let's start with the oldest, I guess you would say, but the most pain in the rear end, I guess. So coming over here is our, and I'll try and get this camera set up so that you can see. Okay, so here's just a standard balance beam type of scale. And you have to calibrate these. So right now I've got this set to 4 grains, and you get a kit like this, and it has weights and different things that you can use to calibrate it. I tend to use the least weight to calibrate it. So this is set to 4 grains. So each one of these little things is worth 2. So boom, there's 2, there's 4. And you can see, hopefully you can see, that the balance beam has stabilized, and it is in fact balanced. So you could simply just trickle powder into here until it balances, and then pour that powder into your case. We're actually going to not do that. We're going to use a couple different things. Lost my. Okay. Let's talk about this device up here first. Okay, so this is a powder thrower, and the way that this works is you put your powder in here, you adjust here, and they come with variable inserts so you can throw rifle charges or handgun charges. All right, and the idea is you're going to adjust, drop some powder, put it in the scale until you get it perfect, then lock it down. You lock down this nut. There's like a Allen screw here that you can lock down. So what we're going to do is we'll drop some powder. The first one I always throw back in, let everything settle. All right. So we drop our powder charge, drop it into the thing to test it, into the scale to test it, and then you lock it down. So these are actually relatively easy. Just boom, boom, powder's in. And the powder's in. Now, that's pretty simple. Let me show you this guy here. Okay, get the camera in place. Okay. Now this one here, it's kind of cool. So what I can do with this one, turn it on. It's going to go through its calibration tests that it needs to go through. And it tells me it's good to go. Now, to make this thing work, all I need to do is, and I'll bring this close so you can kind of see. It's hard for me to see, so hopefully y'all can see. I'm just going to go ahead and put the charge that I want in, which is going to be, I guess now would be a good time to discuss where I'm getting this information from. So we have 2 books here. We have the older Hornady reloading book here. Now when we look into the 124 grain jacketed, if we look under unique, we see that the low load is 4.7 grains with a max load of 5.1 grains. I don't know if you can see that, or if it looks like it might be reversed. The screen might be reversed, but just take my word for it. That's what it says. Now we go into Richard Lee's book, this guy here, and we go to the closest we can find is a 125 grain jacketed bullet, and shows 4.8, so pretty close, with a max load of 4.9. So they've gotten a little bit more conservative with their loads. All right, so we're back over here to the powder measure device. I'm going to go ahead and put our load in. We're going to go with a 4.8. So we go 4.8, and we hit dispense. And you can see it'll start trickling. And it tells me that we have one good load here. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. We'll set our brass out kind of in a row.
And we'll go ahead and just pour it on in. Hard to do this with one hand. All right, got it in there. Now to this one. Set it back on, and it will automatically start pouring the next load. And now you can see it's trickling a little slow, and then it'll stabilize and it'll beep to us. There we go. Take that and pour it on in. Again, kind of hard to do this one-handed. If I spill it, it is what it is. I really like this device here, especially if you're doing really precision rifle loads. This really does a good job. But I spilled a little bit there. Now, a couple grains is not a huge deal. We'll use the powder thrower for the rest. The powder thrower is definitely faster, but that scale, in my opinion, the electronic one is definitely more accurate. All right. All right, so we got that taken care of. Now let's go ahead and get the bullet seating die installed. So we're going to go ahead and use our tool to loosen this guy up. This is the Hornady Lock and Load single stage press. If I didn't mention that in the last video, it's a really good single stage press. Plenty of other really good ones out there. It's just this is the one I happen to have. All right. Okay, so the bullet seating die. The job of this thing is what the name implies. You're going to seat the bullet. So with this, what we're going to want to do is we need to know how deep we need to seat the bullet. Okay, now we use our manual for that, and the Lee manual tells us that we're going to seat to 1.150, which is our minimum overall length. So this 1.150 is going to be our minimum overall length. Now this may be a compressed load just by looking at the way that the powder sits in here. Unique is a bulky powder, much more bulky than Bullseye and things like that, so you got to keep that in mind. So what we're going to go ahead and do, and it helps if you already have a pre-made bullet that you can use kind of as a guide. So what I'll do is I'll put that bullet in, I'll run it up. Then we're going to take our bullet seating die. I'm going to take the dial or the screw that forces the bullet seater down. I'm going to back that out a little ways, okay? And we're just going to go ahead and set her down, and we're going to screw it in. And I'm going to screw it in until I feel it touch and it just stopped, okay? So that tells me that we're kind of right there. Now I'm using a 115 grain bullet that's seated to a little bit deeper than that, but we're close. All right, so take that out. We already know we're going to be close. I'll back that out a hair. Lock this down. Boom, good to go. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a projectile, and we're going to start on case number 1. We'll just grab one of the ones that's right over here. I'm going to set the case on, and I'll do 1 or 2 like this, then I'll move the camera closer so you can see. So I'll set the projectile on the case. I'm going to run it up. We're going to kind of seat it and see where we're at. And we're going to go ahead and mic it. And we're just a hair over. So I'm going to see where exactly we're at. We're actually at 1.157. So that's good enough for government work. Remember, the 1.150 is minimum overall length. Now, something to be aware of with your semi-automatic firearms, you got to make sure that it's going to fit in the magazine and fit in and actually chamber and fire. So a round that's too long will be problematic for that. So that's plenty good for what we're trying to do, and that's in fact what we're going to stick with. And actually, you know what? We'll take it down just a hair. And look, little quarter increments is all you need. So let's see where that gets us. That was just a little teeny increment, and that actually took us down below that. Okay, so we're going to back it back out. Now, what should you do now? You've got a round that you've seated too deep. Well, a device like this. Okay, this is a bullet puller. Now we're going to use this. Basically, it's got a collet in there. We're going to insert our case in there. Boom. We're going to lock it down. Now I'm going to hit it on a hard surface, which is going to be the floor. You're not going to see that, but I'm going to hit it just enough times to be able to drive that projectile forward without losing the powder all over the place. And whether or not you can see it now, but I think you can see, in fact, we have caused that projectile to come out a little bit. So we'll mic it, and then we'll go back to where we were. Sometimes go with your first instinct. And I just spilled a case with powder. That's all right, we'll fix that. Let's see where it took us to. So this definitely brought it out. So once again, let's see where we're at now. And that is right there. It's 1.153. Plenty good. We are good to go. That's a good case. We'll set that over here. We're going to do another one. Now, I would add this. If you are doing cast lead bullets, you're going to need to use what's called a case mouth expander to bell it a little bit, or case belling die to just open it up a little bit, or else you'll shave lead off of it. I didn't do that here because we're loaded in jacketed rounds, but just be mindful of that. Here's another case, and I'll get the camera close on the next one. Run it up. All right, let's see how close I can get you. All right. And up. And even though these are jacketed rounds, I do kind of feel some resistance from not belling the case. And I do believe these are, in fact, compressed loads, because I am feeling a little bit of compression there. That's okay, just you need to be mindful of your maximum charges. Follow your reloading manuals. Up. And I spilled some powder out of one of the cases, so we'll just go ahead and recharge that with our powder thrower. Good to go. And we'll put a case on, or a projectile on, and run it up in the die. Okay, so now we got these 10 ladies sitting right here, and we have to crimp it. So the crimping operation is important, because in firing, you don't want inertia to cause the projectile to go into the case or come out of the case. So you do want to put some degree of crimp. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, we got one more left. Saw a charged case there. So you do want to put some degree of crimp on there to prevent that from happening. Here's how it works. We're going to go ahead and take our seating die out. All right, seating die's out. Now, crimp die. Crimp die it's essentially just a tube, and it gets smaller as we go further down, and it forces the case to be crimped a little bit to the projectile, to the bullet. We don't want to get crazy on this, just a little bit. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to take one that we just did. We're going to run it up. We're going to put this die in. I'm going to take this collar and back it all the way out, and I'm going to send it down. I'm going to send it down until I feel it touch and stop. Now, all right, so right there, I feel resistance and a stop. Now, each of the die manufacturers may give you different instructions. Lee makes a very different crimp die. They use a collet type of system where it squeezes, as opposed to this that is just just gets smaller. So in this, I went down to, I felt the tension, and I'm just going to go like a quarter of a turn. And for me, that's plenty. It's not going to feel like much, but trust me, it's plenty. So that's crimp. But again, follow what your die instructions tell you to do. And I'll get you guys a little bit closer. All right. Okay, so that's going to be 10 rounds of 9mm. So the final thing we need to do is put them in a box and label them. So I'm going to drop them into this box. Now's a great time to inspect the cases. Understand that you're putting stress on the brass while you're loading these rounds. So this is a good time to handle them. And look, sometimes you'll get neck splits that you'll notice after the fact. Sometimes you'll see primers that weren't seated correctly. Sometimes you will see primers that are sticking up a little bit, or they were turned sideways and they got crushed. Now, if you're being careful, that may not be an issue, but it happens. You may even see instances where the case mouth or the case got crushed during bullet insertion, so something to be aware of. So here we go. There's 10 rounds of 9mm, and however long this video is taken. I would write the label on it, but I can assume that all of you don't want to see me write random stuff on here. I will tell you what I would put on here, though. I'd put today's date. I would put all the components that I use, the type of primer, okay, powder, the powder charge, the overall length of the total case, okay, of the total cartridge rather, that we trimmed it and what length we trimmed it to, and what projectile we used. It might not be obvious when you just pull it out and look at it like this that this is a 124. It could be a 115 or whatever. So write all that stuff down, and I keep a ledger, I keep a log that I use, and that kind of helps me. And I got it around here somewhere, or I'd show it to you. At any rate, it's a big binder, and it allows me, every time I make a load, I put it in there, and then if it performed well or however it performed, I write that down, and that lets me improve. And years later, if I want to go back to that load, if I haven't shot that caliber in a while, well, I've got all my data to go back to. We take our case gauge here, drop the case in, and boom, goes right on in. Do you need to test every single round? No. Can you do batch testing? Yeah. Should you check your powder charges every so many rounds? Yeah, you should verify it. Things can get off, get messed up, stuff like this. Electronic can have something weird happen. So it's always good to check periodically. Whatever that amount of checking that you want to do is up to you. That's entirely up to you. So I think that covers all of that.
So in this video, we covered the loading process for 9mm on a single stage press. We talked about inspecting our brass and what to look for. We talked about the sizing depriming operation, what it is, why we do it, and what are the methods of doing it. We talked about the repriming operation. We talked about powder throwers. How do we measure powder? How do we get powder into the case? We talked about the powder throwers. We talked about the individual scales. We talked about the more expensive electronic devices out there. We seated our bullets. We talked about bullet seating depth. We also talked about crimping and why that's important. And if you seat the bullet too far, one of these. And final inspection and putting it in the box. So this was a relatively short video, so I'll open it to questions if anyone has any. There's like a 20-second delay. So if you have a quick question, I see some of the folks that are on here, many of you have my phone number anyway, so you can call me if you need to. Those of you that don't, hit me up on Facebook if you think of something later. But like I said, I'll hang tight for a second and see if any questions come through. If not, we'll go ahead and start wrapping it up. All right, so just a couple quick things. Please encourage your friends to join the Maryland Gun Owners on Facebook page. We've got like 5,600 members or something like that. If you invite them to join, there's 3 or 4 questions that they have to answer. So please let them know that they have to, in fact, answer those questions. Myself, Nicole, Rich, and Jennifer are the admins, and if it sits for a while and somebody's in the inbox and they haven't answered the questions, we're just going to decline them. It is set to a closed group. We've had some folks in here that have stirred a few things up and had to be removed. We do have rules, and so not everything, just anything goes in here. But nonetheless, invite your friends, tell them to answer the questions. Once the admins have reviewed their request, we'll go ahead and get them in as a member. Also, go to the Urban Defense LLC Facebook page. Check us out there. Check me out there. Go to our website. See who we are and what we offer, and if we can offer assistance to you, glad to do so. Let me know that you saw us on Facebook Live. Comment below if you think of a question later, or you want to throw in your experience. Maybe you have, again, I'm not the expert on this. Maybe you have some different experiences, different equipment, things that other people may find helpful that are trying to learn. Go ahead and throw it in the comments. And this video will stay up, so the comments, we'll continue to check the comments, and if we see something that needs to be addressed in another video, we'll certainly do that. The next video, I'm not really sure what we're going to do on that one yet, but there will be another video. It'll probably be on a Monday night, just like this one and the last one, maybe 1 or 2 weeks. We'll see. And if you have any ideas on something you'd like discussed, send it out there, and maybe that'll be the topic for next video. With that said, though, I appreciate everyone that's watching, and see you next time. Take care.